And we want to be very inclusive. We want as many people, as many stakeholders, which is part of the things that I'm really a big proponent of. If you can turn the world into a stakeholder with everything you do, and if you can provide wins for everybody, that's where movements are created.
Hi everyone, it's LoCascio, and welcome to another episode of Over the Wall. Today I have Anthony Di Iorio, who's one of the founders of Ethereum, one of the most amazing platforms right now in the blockchain world. He's done many things that are just really extraordinary, especially taking the entrepreneurial journey. He's going to be here talking about, obviously what he did with Ethereum, but also some of the things he's working on right now around, giving back and creating models and frameworks that can help society and to help people that are in need. So really excited to have him here, and it's going to be another great episode of Over the Wall. Anthony, welcome. Great to have you here. Obviously, your claim to fame is one of the original people in the crypto world, one of the founders of Ethereum, which is extraordinary. And I just think, you came from a family, I think, of entrepreneurs. From what you told me, you worked in the family business, and I thought it'd be great to this show's about entrepreneurs, about the mental game of being an entrepreneur. It's about really how do you go out in the world and live purpose. And maybe we start at the beginning. Where did you start? How did you make your way to where you are? And we can just start there, and then we'll move into more the purpose of life.
That sounds good to me. It started for me just a bit north of Toronto in a city called Richchurch, Stouffville. I was about 2 years old when my dad built a house up there. So that's about a half an hour away from Toronto. And I remember when I was about 8 years old, my dad brought home a personal computer. It was right at the dawn of the internet, the personal computing age. I was born in 75, and it was about, I think it was about 82 where I got my first computer. And that was just the thing that between that, books, and sports, for me, it was like the three major things for me growing up. But computers was what I just became involved with, and building computers and going to computer camp, and then with modems before the internet, and the whole spectrum of the baud modems going up from 1200 all the way up to 14.4 and the speeds. And this is well before the internet and people being able to communicate. And I really was just in that world and connecting with other computers. And it was my first business was doing networking for a family friend. This was back in when I was about 11 years old. And then my first company was developing websites in the early 90s, HTML1, graphic design, right at the dawn of the internet, because it was just amazing to me how now I can just connect to multiple computers and not just a single computer on a single phone line. So I decided to go to business for university rather than doing computers, just because I never wanted to be a developer. But my dad was an entrepreneur. My dad's a problem solver and inventor. And I wanted to be, I did it because it was a convenience really at the time, and I got a business degree. But it was really, I was not really passionate about school, and I never really liked school. I didn't like to be told what to do. And I had a very cavalier attitude towards school, and including university, where I kind of just cruised through, and I got my degree. But why did I take marketing as my major? I don't know. I was not really driven by anything. And I went into marketing for a few years, and then I joined the family business in the 2000s. It's a sliding patio door manufacturing company. My dad and his brothers had about 100 employees, and I increased my skills working in the office and hiring people, and just kind of advanced more my entrepreneurial mindset there. My dad sold the business in 2008, and I had an opportunity to do something that he said, you don't want to still work for the new owners of the company. My dad had retired, and he's and they sold it, and he said, well, what do you want to do? And he helped me to decide that I wanted to get into something green and something technology focused. It was at that time when solar panels were starting to take off, a lot of green initiatives, and here in Canada there were a few initiatives for people to install efficient systems, green systems, and I decided to get into geothermal drilling. We knew a family friend that was the foremost kind of person in the space of geothermal drilling in Canada, and this is geothermal drilling for heating and cooling buildings.
Yeah,
it's basically drilling hundreds of feet into the ground and using the Earth's temperature to provide the heating and the cooling via a heat pump system that extracts temperature from the ground and puts it in the building. It's a very green technology that has really good payoffs. So he helped me buy this drill. It was from Italy, and I ended up going to Italy. And then my drill, we got hired to do a bunch of IKEA projects there. So we did an IKEA in Milan, and basically it was our drilling hundreds of holes, hundreds of feet deep in the parking lots of these IKEAs to be able to provide the heating and cooling systems for that. I eventually brought it back to Toronto and started to continue to do commercial buildings and residences and condominiums, retirement centers. And it was a lucrative business, and it had really good paybacks, and people were starting to utilize it quite often in new projects. But then I got my first lesson of what happens when government can get involved in things, and there was a lot of red tape that started to be put on these systems and developing this, and it slowed down the projects, and then people didn't want to do it anymore because of the time it took to institute, and it kind of fell by the wayside. And I ended up renting out the drill to another firm. And I took some time to think about what do I want to do? What do I do now? I had made some money in real estate. So I had some rental properties that I'd sold. This was after the 2008 crisis in the US, and thinking that the same thing would happen up here in Canada, which never did or hasn't happened yet. But I ended up between 2005 and 2010 and selling some properties, had some capital. And at the time I started, via my brother's guidance, or my brother getting me thinking about what money is and the history of money, and starting to realize what had happened during the housing crisis, the financial crisis, the intervening of governments in free markets, and the thinking of economics that leads to these booms and bust cycles, the Keynesian model it's called. And I started learning about another model called, another framework called the Austrian School of Economics, which is kind of a contrarian view to the typical standard taught economics that's taught in schools these days. And it's more about sound money, and it's more about creating value, and it's more about, to me, individual responsibility and principles. And it's a lot of it is contrary to the thinking of these situations that lead to bubbles and booms and bust cycles.
You know, I'm curious, what do you think happened during the financial crisis? We all know the financial crisis. We all know sort of what kicked it off. And then the loaning of money to the mortgage-backed securities and everything that happened. But like your perspective, because I've talked to a number of people who are at the beginning of, got into crypto and got into blockchain early. And a lot of it is about the financial crisis and then this idea of self-sovereignty. But first we start with like, what was your perspective on it besides the, just tell me what's your perspective on it?
I think the idea that, I believe to an extent there's a necessary need for groups to gather and be able to create systems that help other people, and government is kind of been constructed to do that. But in general, a lot of people that are in government, I think, are not the right people that should be making decisions and problem solvers. And I think a lot of it ends up becoming government involvement in free markets, which leads to irregularities that happen and leads to money kind of being swung into the hands of people that lead to a lot of the larger problems that exist. So to me, that the main thing is really government's inability to understand the need to let things kind of flow and let things work. And once things start getting put in, people start getting benefits, things, and human nature kind of creates these systems, which leads to stakeholders that don't become appeased, and a lot of people that are not happy with situations, and it leads to the problems. And a lot of it has to do with just, these are systems that haven't been able to thought about, and people understand need to evolve, and they need to change, because it's not leading to a lot of people being happy with what's going on.
They're pretty old systems. When you think about it, like our system of government is fairly old, and we're living in a different world than even the founding fathers understood in our country about a democracy. And obviously in Canada, the same thing. And I just, I think about, like, I guess it's a question of, are we at the end of these systems, and is there a system that can, replace the, and what's your, what do you see in that?
Yeah, I definitely am a very optimistic person. I believe there's definitely things that are going to evolve via technology and via leadership and via principles that people can bring forth that get people listening to them and understanding that the more we work together, the more we're loving to our neighbors and trying to help people out, the better everybody's going to be. And that's kind of the situation that I'm trying to bring forward. But a lot of people just don't have the capabilities to think outside of the systems that really work right now. And without being able to have the problem-solving capabilities to think beyond and figure out ways to have more stakeholders being provided with wins, and not just a majority or a large percentage that end up you're fighting because what you're doing isn't benefiting them and not benefiting the planet. And we need to figure out ways to bring people together, unite people, create movements around people doing things that are helping out their neighbors and doing a service to others. And I believe if we all do that in a way that shows that the more you do that, the more your life is going to be improved, and the more you can help others, the more that you're going to get what it is you want. I think if we can switch to that kind of mentality away from the maximizing shareholder returns that's happening right now, I think that everybody's going to benefit from it. And I'm hoping that I can be someone to bring that forward.
So I'm wondering, I often think the same thing, which is that it's kind of like there's always in our mentality there's got to be a winner and a loser, right? It's kind of like that's kind of how we're programmed, that there's winners and losers. Even how we're competing with, like I look back and think we're competing with China today, obviously, and other countries, but like
China. Stop you 1 second. Who's the we?
Our country, our tribes, our countries.
So I think vocabulary is super important, and clarity of message and words. As soon as someone says we and tries to include me in something that I feel I might not be part of because I'm an individual, I put my
Same with me. I'm saying the they.
It's important to define, and I try not to use we. I don't like being put into groups. I think it leads to a lot of divisiveness and a lot of tribe mentality. So the idea of we think this way or we think that, my first saying is like, wait, who's we? That's not me. So there's a majority of people maybe that think a certain way, but there's other ways to do things. And I think it's about bringing that forward with leadership and education and all the things that need to be done to showcase a better way. Because when people believe their lives are being improved by what it is you're doing, and every time they support you in what you're doing, their life is better, they're going to join you. And they're going to create movements around what it is you're doing. And if you can get rid of competition and get rid of thinking that competitors are your enemies, and that we have to figure out ways for everybody to be winning, or else you're going to get people against what it is you're doing. But we just need to think a little better and use frameworks to make that happen.
So it seems like if we go to like the idea of distributed organizations, or let's take Ethereum, and you guys are sitting at the beginning of creating this extraordinary platform, and I guess some of these ideas are obviously trickling into the concept of we can build not a company that's going to win or lose, that's out to win against someone losing. We're going to build something different that's more community-based, I guess.
Complementary is the word I like to use.
So tell us, what was it like at the beginning of those conversations? Like you're like the founding fathers, I guess Satoshi's like the George Washington, I assume. But,
yeah.
But there's, you're like the founding fathers of this technology and the thought about distributed autonomous organizations. And what are the, can you dive in there a little bit?
Sure. I heard about Bitcoin soon after I started looking at economics, and to me it was wow, this is a culmination of game theory, mathematics, provably fair technologies that provide trust and transparency, that remove the emotions of humans from the equation, that says to non-value added participants in the equation, you're not needed anymore. We can automate things in a way that are going to execute in a way that's going to create peer-to-peer interaction without all these middle layers. So I heard about Bitcoin and I got it right away because my economic studying about sound money, which is what this is, about computers and technology my whole life, about decentralized systems. I followed the whole Napster scene and the whole file sharing systems and the problems that emerged with centralized systems. I knew all that. And this was just a massive culmination of technology and philosophy and all the different things to bring forward something in a project that I feel could empower people with the ability to be in control of their lives. And I've always been a very freedom-minded person, and everything I do is to seek more freedom. So this was a freedom-oriented technology that could allow me to be my own bank and not have to rely on other banks, not have to rely on the thought that maybe government could take the money from you like they did in Cyprus to their citizens because they're in centralized systems that the government controlled. Bitcoin is a decentralized system that enables anybody around the world to participate, anybody around the world to prove what's going on and be able to be incentivized to put resources in. It's such a holistic project that is all focused around empowering people. And with Ethereum, which was devised based on what happened with Bitcoin and based on a few other innovations and thoughts, became something that I believe it can be much more powerful than Bitcoin and adds a lot more automation and adds a lot more functionality and programmability to what Bitcoin brought to be able to impact not just finance, but pretty much any sector that's out there, just like the internet did. It's literally the next generation of the internet, the next iteration of a decentralized internet, one that's not controlled by centralized servers, by people. It's controlled by a massive computing network of decentralized nodes that can't be shut down, that things can execute. It really was what the initial thought of what the internet was, and that's kind of what's being built with Ethereum.
Yeah, I feel like, obviously I started my company in 95. You were in the generation one of the internet also. I feel like we had these visions of digital and how it would change our lives, but we kind of didn't have the operational model of idea of decentralized work and building rewards into the work, and you could be anywhere in the world participating in the work. We still came with the mentality you would have a company and there are a bunch of people you put on the payroll and you would have control over those people, where the beauty of these systems seems to be that it's allowing people to actually be very aligned to where I guess we are today, post-pandemic, or we're still in the middle of it. But, this idea you can live anywhere, you can plug in and you can make a living and have your own freedom. Some people look at that and I think they think it's a crazy idea. By the way, so we're talking like, yeah, this really makes sense. But a lot of people are on the fringe of it and they're looking in and going like, this doesn't make sense to me, or I can never work like that, or this is crypto. It's what do you, what's your sense?
It's going to take a lot of time, but the older systems are, and the less efficient they are in general, the more that deficiency leads to a creation of new things and new innovations which challenge the status quo. So I believe there's always like a shift towards trying things, innovation and evolution, to things will get better and better and better. And the internet came about with an amazing idea to be able to democratize information. And it really had an amazing impact on anything to do with information, the movement of information, from postal services to publications to so many different things. And then from that emerged cloud computing, and it was a massive evolution that at the time it did what it was supposed to do, but it ended up going down a different path that led to a lot more centralization and a lot more control by individuals and organizations and governments that restrict freedom and restrict thought. And it ended up in a situation where a lot of the internet right now is not really what it was intended to be when it started. And because of those deficiencies, new things arise, and things that say, instead of this, we're going to empower individuals to do as they like. We're going to make sure that new models exist to monetize. New models exist that avoid things like collecting user information, avoid things such as deficient models like advertising, which lead to this fake news, like just a horrible situation with these advertisers who are just directing people that don't know any better, and unsophisticated people to go down rabbit holes because they're being fed things that their brains are not enabled to comprehend. It's really, really malicious, and I'm really scared of a lot of the technology that's being built these years. And it goes back to the traditional models that we've seen with very large organizations and these user collection of information, monetizing information, also using advertising models which are trying to get a result for an end user based on getting masses to go do some type of action. And then fake news emerges, where you have 6 times more amount of fake news being spread than real news, because it ties on to someone's emotion and gets them to spread it and push it over. And you end up getting these really divisive tribes that have been forming. And it's really a massive issue that we've seen over the last many years. But the organizations say that's the only models they know.
Yeah.
And what are we supposed to do? And there's such massive conglomerates that every month they have to bring in shareholder returns, and those shareholder returns have to keep increasing, and they start twisting the dials in ways that lead to deficiencies for people and planet. And it ends up that those models start leading to situations that are just not good for all stakeholders, and that's requiring a lot of change. And this is what these new technologies are doing, is they're empowering people to be in control of their lives, their money, their communications, their identities, are all things that they should be in control of, that no one else should have control of. And if they want to monetize it, they should decide that, not being able to be sold something so that they're giving that away. And if they want to do it, that's fine. I think people have choices, and people need to take responsibility for their actions. And I think we've seen a lot of that not happening, and entitlements. So I just see this new world that's emerging as one that's going to offer a lot more freedom and empowerment and tools for people to monetize their lives and just be in control of their lives. And it's something that I saw very early I wanted to be part of. And what we've done with Ethereum is really advancing so much of that happening, and open technologies that people are flourishing and developers are building on top of. And it's just really exciting to see where that's going to take us.
One of the things we'd like to cover on the podcast is, the journey of building innovative things is usually pretty hard. And usually the stories are like, I did A, B, C, D, and it all kind of seems like it connected and it went fast. And I guess I'll ask you, like, did you ever have any doubts or crossroad in what you were doing? We talk about the mental game, getting over a wall. I mean, you've obviously done amazing things so far, but I assume there's some dark days, as you're charting your course to where you've gotten to.
Yeah, and that's interesting. You ask about that, and I mean, getting over that wall, that thing that's in your way that you're trying to surpass to get on to the next thing. There's been many of those, and I don't think without those struggles that someone can do things that are amazing. And you've had your struggles. I've heard and read about things that you've gone through in the past, and that makes us. I wouldn't want to change a single thing that's happened. No matter how hard it was, no matter how difficult, no matter how much it almost broke me. Those things have made me who I am. And I think it's really important to embrace those things as lessons and guides for what it is that you're learning to be able to do better things down the road. And I try to be grateful for those things that have happened to me and those dark times, those times where you feel that you're just completely overwhelmed because you take on too much, because your mentality is just, when you're into something, you go absolutely nuts in it. And that's what I did with crypto when I got in. I built the Toronto community and the Toronto Bitcoin Meetup group. I then built a national organization. We then started building the global network. We did Ethereum out of my shop in Toronto called The Central. And then I just went nuts. But then you get these peaks and valleys, and you get overwhelmingness, and things lead to situations where you then go back into a state of lethargy. And that's kind of what I've done and tried the last couple of years to figure out ways to be able to still change the world in the way I want to do, but also stay in a mental state. And we talked about, rising early, the things that I do now to try to balance that, because balancing that out is so important.
Do you remember, can you share one story of like a dark day or that time where you had doubt or something, because one of the things that I believe in, and it's part of what we talk about here, is that, entrepreneurs, sometimes they don't understand that you have those dark days. It's normal. It's just normal, and you got to get through them. It's not you being a failure or you being not smart, but do you have a specific, do you remember something in your head you could share with us of a day or a time?
Yeah, I talked about the geothermal company that I had, and because of the government inaction there, and because of doing drilling in the earth with drillers that are a different breed of character is super challenging. And there came a time there where it wasn't working out, and we decided to lease the drill out. And I was like, what do I do now? What's the next thing after this? And I was in a pretty lost space trying to figure out. What's next? What am I interested in? What can I do? And that's when I started getting into economics. But it was a challenging time when you don't have a direction of, what is the thing you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And then how are you going to do it? And that's kind of the three things that I really try to work with. I'm going to do more with children to try to figure out those three things, and students that I speak with. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? And how are you going to do it? And that's when you don't have any of those things, you're trying to figure them out, and maybe you feel lost because you're not like, what's driving me? Why am I getting up every morning? What excites me? It's those times that I feel really lost, that I thought this was what I was going to do, but I'm wrong now. Am I ever going to figure out what it is that I really want to do? And when I heard about Bitcoin, that for me was that time there where it's a culmination of 4 decades of computers, communications, entrepreneurship, economics, that culminated in something that's like, this is my time now.
Yeah, but how'd you find it? Like you said, you were there in the geothermal, that's kind of ending, the government's getting involved. You're like, you realize this business is not moving forward. Typical entrepreneurial story, right? It's like the original idea wasn't the end, but somehow you have an open mind, or you're doing something to attract a whole nother world. How did that area work? They're pretty different crypto from geothermal. Something happened there, right?
The geothermal is entrepreneurship. It's learning lessons. It's hiring people. It's so many different things that relate to any type of business. Is what it is. It's solving problems. We were problem solvers drilling. You remember that? What was that thing back in the day where they're trying to figure out how to plug the holes and things? It's a very difficult thing that you're doing with different rocks and different surfaces, and then putting water in there. So it's constantly your problem solving. So that's part of the entrepreneurial journey. Okay. But no, I've always been in technology and computers, and I just studied economics and learning about sound money and all these principles of what it needs to be sound money. So with the technology, the entrepreneurship, the economics, all those things, hearing something about here's a technology solution that's based on these principles, based on sound money, based on this could be the holy grail of what it means to empower digital assets of provable ownership that can act as the properties of money and has very good properties of money. This is massively game changing. And that's what I grasped right away and started building community around that concept. So the dark time was when you start, you lose your focus. You're like, what am I doing? Where can I provide value? And that can be pretty challenging when you don't have a purpose in life.
Yeah. So how did you find the purpose? So you're saying I didn't have a purpose. Did you have a purpose back? Was it clear to you what your purpose was back then?
My purpose was freedom. My purpose was to seek whatever. I never liked being told what to do, which is what I told you from school. My purpose was, I know what's going on in my life. I know that I'm going to be doing something that's going to be very interesting. I haven't figured it out yet. Don't tell me what to do. Only I know what I should be doing with my life based on my life experiences. Have trust and confidence and faith in what it is that I'm going to do, and I'm going to figure it out. And to me, when I realized that could be the thing that I could do, that could do it all, that's when I jumped head first. And now, unlike the internet, I was actually prepared now, and I had the experience and the tools on my tool belt in order to be able to capitalize on that perfect time of nobody knowing about it, no community there. And I started saying, I can have a big impact. Let's build the community. Let's build the whole thing up so that I can be a center of space where people and ideas start flourishing and growing. Then I set up a physical space, and I just became a beacon for empowerment of people using these technologies. And that's when ideas start growing and people come together. And that's kind of where these ideas started really moving. And that's how I got connected with the team and what we did with Ethereum.
So it seems like one of the things that your lessons here, once again, going back to entrepreneurship and living the purpose, is like your job. It sounds like you're saying my job is I'm the law of attraction. My idea is to be a beacon, bring people around my idea, even though it didn't exist. I started something up in Canada that didn't exist. It's more like you just put it out, I guess. You took the leap and just put it out and said, I guess this will work.
I want a community. There's no community. I want to interact with people. I should build it up. It's perfect. Let's do it. We went from eight members to thousands of members to 100 and something events we've done in the cryptocurrency space with that. And then you're part of the idea creation of projects and concepts. And that's when Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, the idea concept, I was the first person he showed the white paper to. He had been working with me on my wallets that I was building for the cryptocurrency space. And I'd known him as a writer, that he would write stories on me. And so I got a really good relationship because we were traveling the world, not together, but we'd meet up at conferences. And he was a very reliable, smart 18-year-old. And just next level with his thinking, his writing. And when he showed me something of Ethereum and the concept and the idea, I showed it to some colleagues. And then a bunch of us together kind of came together and said, this is really the holy grail, the next iteration of cryptocurrency, of blockchain. And we went for it. And we did it publicly, unlike Satoshi did, because of concerns with things, that we came up and said, we're going to be doing something that's going to be radically changing to society, to governments, to every single sector out there. It's going to empower people, and it's going to remove a lot of the non-value-added participants in the equation that exist in every sector. And it's going to have consequences, but it's also going to lead to more freedoms for individuals. And we took the plunge, and we decided to be very public with who we are, because you've got to build trust. It's so important to build trust and be transparent, and to act with principles, and to bring people together, and to be leaders. All those things need to culminate and come together. And that's what we did in the organization. And we did it all around ways that showcase that we're here to improve situations. And people got behind us. And we had groups and organizations all over the world. We're the largest crowdfunded project of all time, raising $18 million from 9,000 participants. And this was a number of years ago. And they trusted us. And we built it, we launched it, and then now it's a $200+ billion Goliath that's being built and worked on by every pretty much company you can think of that's building a blockchain is using Ethereum to help improve itself and help improve other people's lives.
We had this restaurateur Klaus Meyer on. He started this restaurant Noma with his partner, and he created all the Nordic cuisine. If you remember, they became the best restaurant in the world out of nowhere in Nordic cuisine. And then he kind of split. Like he didn't want to be a part of it, and he just came back recently. But did you guys stay together, or did it kind of split up, or and then you kind of go working as partners in this whole thing with that energy? But what happened there?
it's an amazingly unique, the whole situation that happened with the founders, and then the way that things split and people went on and did other projects that both complement and challenge the system. So there were initially 5 founders of the organization, 5 that didn't really know each other very well, but it was such a massive idea and opportunity that me, who had learned I never wanted partners, I'd learned that over time, said, I can't turn this down. And I funded and became one of the 5 initial founders. And again, a couple of them I hadn't even met in person. And when you're a founder or have partners, I learned it's at least a 6-month kind of thing. You need to get to know someone and do these things. But this was totally throw that out the window. It's too much of an opportunity. I can't turn this down. We're going to do this. But we then added another 3 founders. There were 8 people, and decisions didn't get made. It was 8 people. There were 9 votes total. Vitalik got 2 votes. The rest of us got 1 vote. So any deciding thing went to him. But you had different philosophical beliefs. You had developers who were founders that didn't understand the legality of things and the regulatory climate that we needed to navigate to ensure that we didn't go to jail. These types of things that you have to get 8 people to recognize, people that are not at a certain maturity level to be able to even grasp or understand. Like Vitalik was 19 years old. He's not going to understand why we can't do certain things according to business. So very challenging with decision making. Yet I still
voted. So you're saying you guys voted? Everything was on a vote system.
It was on a vote. We had leadership meetings and we had a vote. There was 8 of us on the core founding team. Vitalik had an extra vote. It was a tiebreaker. So everything was on a voting process, but still, it was such a slow system that we've done the project's done amazingly. Like I wouldn't change a thing with it, but who knows where it could be with certain other things. If we could have set up in Canada, which we couldn't, we had to go to Switzerland because of the more clarity and certainty that we had with the regulations and rules out there. Because we ended up doing a massive global crowd sale, we had to ensure that there was no SEC violations or issues there, because we wanted to be able to sell our product Ether to U.S. citizens, and we want to be very inclusive. We want as many people, as many stakeholders, which is part of the things that I'm really a big proponent of. If you can turn the world into a stakeholder with everything you do, and if you can provide wins for everybody, that's where movements are created. So we wanted to be able to sell to as many people as possible, and we ended up selling to 9,000 participants in an open crowd sale, and anybody could buy as much as they wanted, and they trusted us and gave us their capital. And then about a year later, we launched the product, and it was about a 25-cent product at the time, and now we know we're over $2,000.
Yeah.
And the market cap went from 18 million up to 300 billion, and it's all that comes from the value, and it comes from companies being built on Ethereum, and new sectors that are emerging that are being created due to things like the NFT markets, or due to things that are coming out that you couldn't possibly do before with digital information that could always be copied. And now these technologies have created assets that can't be copied. That's the whole kind of problem that was solved. And that's really what it comes down to, is now you could have assets that are provably non-duplicatable, that can prove ownership of who owns it, and I can send it through the internet to somebody else. That's the major thing that actually came about, because before anything digital could be duplicated.
Right. That's kind of the version. When I think about version 1 of the internet, and the mindset we created was that digital goods, or because you can replicate them, basically unlimited replication, that they can't have as much value as a physical good that's created through time and human.
Well, money. You could never have digital money on the internet, because if you could create a copy of a digital dollar, and now you can create a copy and give you a copy, it's losing the properties of money, which is things like scarcity and fungibility and all the things that are needed for properties of money. And that's it. That's the game changer right there. Is that an asset that's scarce, fungible, which means it's divisible into many different units, easily transportable from one person to another, decentrally controlled, or not controlled by a central organization, and you know how much will be in existence now and anytime in the future. It can't be printed out of nothing. It was just a perfect system to come together to create something that really is going to lead to like the amount of people that have no access to financial services because they have to have these systems of centralized governance that are set up in each country. Bitcoin, anybody can use it. You have a computer, you have an internet connection, you're part of the online system there. And that's very powerful. The billions that don't have access to it, don't have access to the typical financial system.
So you said this word about stakeholders, like a world full of stakeholders. And I guess I'd like to flush that out a little bit, because it seems to be your philosophy and the philosophy of this group that created this technology is it's a different world. Explain. Everyone talks about stakeholder capitalism. Even public companies now, we want to be stakeholder capitalism, and I'm always like, I don't really know what you're talking about. Like I get it. I'm saying like, but I think there's an authenticity if you really say stakeholder and what that could mean, and maybe you can flush that out versus it's just being thrown around as a word for public companies in this day and age to look good.
Yeah. So to me, many of the models that exist right now, ways to business models, agency models, all usually deal with stakeholders that are not expanded out as much as it could be. So their company is a stakeholder, right? The CEO is a stakeholder. The board of directors are stakeholders. Their customers are stakeholders. But my models kind of involve increasing the stakeholder pie. So if you have a stakeholder list of the world and only 10% are being sufficed by what it is you're doing, you're really missing out on the 90% of the world that if you brought them along, they would add value as a stakeholder to what it is you're doing. So the lack of problem-solving capabilities in a lot of models that exist out there in a lot of sectors and ecosystems is just because there's not enough problem solvers there to think beyond their typical models that they exist in right now. It's the way it's always been. This is the way it's going to be. This is the industry standard. This is it's like, well, why is it like that? Is there better ways to do things? Can we get the right people focused on problem solvers together to figure out how to add more stakeholders? So it's really about the idea that if you have a few stakeholders, why not add the world as a stakeholder? Why not figure out how to piece everything together so that at the end of the day, you have a win-win-win-win-win-win-win for all stakeholders. And that's including your competitors. It's including people you would never think are in your equation. It's like, it just requires more brain, more thought power, more piecing together of things. But I'm very optimistic that any given state of an industry or sector can be improved.
Do you have a practical example that you're thinking of where that win-win-win-win-win you could see happening and the competitors come together? Like what do you think?
Yeah. So I went down to meet a pretty well-known actor in LA, and he's got an organization. It's an environmental organization, and at the time, his biggest issue was the loss of social capital from friends and family. Okay, trying to support this cause, but they're starting to run away from him because he's consistently year after year asking them for money for a cause they're not really necessarily caring about, or they're not seeing being improved by what they're doing. Okay, I took a lot of time and asked, learning that's his problem and figuring. I spent about a year trying to think about the problem and think about how I could solve the problem. And along the way, I started building a general framework for problem solving. And I started realizing that I had, over the years, been able to have a model that could be used in a general fashion to be able to take any problem, micro or macro. So a micro problem is one that you're not going to add the world to. It's a little problem that you have. You're not going to say, I'm going to add the world as a stakeholder. And then you have macro problems, would say, this is a problem that I think we can try to add the world as a stakeholder. And if we figure out how to create a solution that the world is on board with what we're trying to do in order to solve that problem, we're going to have a whole bunch of a massive movement created of stakeholders that will continue to support that solution because their lives are improved with that macro problem, that they want to continue to support what it is you're doing. So I ended up thinking about and started whiteboarding and thinking, I come up with a model here that has processes, tools, and principles, things that I've learned over my life that I can combine into a general problem solving formula that I think can be applied to any micro or macro problem. So along the way, I'm trying to figure out his problem, and I'm figuring out who are the stakeholders here. You've got him, you've got his foundation, you have his fans potentially, you've got organizations that might want to support what it is he's doing. Okay, you have, and then thinking, well, why wouldn't how do I figure out a way that the whole world could benefit from what's going on here? How do I add them as a stakeholder and try to figure out a way that as many stakeholders can be appeased with a winning situation as possible? So I came up with a situation whereby, when you go into a store and they ask you for a donation towards a certain cause, like here, that's an example of a deficient model that no one really likes. That's the best that organization could come up with to figure out how to try and raise money for a cause that generally the person buying doesn't really care about. It's deficient along the line in that you're being asked for something that most people don't want to be asked for. If they don't give it, they're going to feel bad. To the fact that they might not even want to shop at that store because they're being asked for something. They just want to go buy something. So That's an example of a deficient model that I look at and say, that has a ton of problems. And could we align a situation where instead of being asked for money, you're being asked, what's your problem? And we'll give you money to donate to that problem. Like, flip it around and figure out what everybody's good at, what everybody's bad at, and what problems everybody has. That's kind of very important. Everybody's good at something, people are bad at something, and everybody's got a problem.
Yep.
So in the situation I was dealing with my friend in LA, it's like, what are you good at? You're good at activating people, but you're not a problem solver. So your foundation of what you're trying to do aren't problem solvers either. You shouldn't be doing that. Don't do that. I'm the problem solver, okay? What are your fans good at? Your fans are good at being able to support you in something that you're doing and be able to show others that, hey, support him because he's doing this. So fans are good at that. Let's get the fans doing that. So I've always realized that it's the companies that can provide the money, okay? Companies are not problem solvers. I've done a lot of consulting for banks and Deloitte and a number of organizations, and they're not problem solvers. They have a certain model of the way that they do things, but most organizations have money, so they can put the money towards systems. They're not problem solvers, but they love to be able to show that what they're doing is creating value and that they're ambassadors for change, but they're not going to solve the problem. So you get the money from those guys. That's where the money can come in. And I ended up thinking of a system whereby you poll local communities to figure out what problem around a store has. So let's say a Home Depot, okay? I would figure out around the store, what are the concerns that the local community has, that shop there has. With that information, I find organizations, and I try to do a rating system to figure out which organizations are transparent, trust, all the things you need to do as a foundation and organization. And I present those organizations to the Walmart, and I say, Walmart, I've figured out what your local community cares about. And I've figured out organizations that are really good at solving that problem, okay? I have an idea. What if you partner up with brands in your store? Do promotions. Anytime a customer comes in and buys from that brand is going to donate X amount of that purchase to the user that's buying it, to direct it to a cause that they care about, that's on the wall there. 10 options. Whatever's been selected because your community cares about it, we'll put that on the wall there, and you can, now when you go shop there, you're going to be asked, on your behalf, we would like to donate X amount of money to the charity of your choice or the organization of your choice on the wall.
Well, I guess you could even take it, if I'm following your logic, you could take it that everyone who goes to the cash register and buys something, and there's that chain from the supplier or the creator of the goods, the manufactured consumer product company. Maybe they will back whatever. Maybe I don't like the 10. I got an 11.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can add.
They can follow right through. Like at that moment, we'll put the money out in the world in something that you're really passionate about.
That's taking it to another level. That's what I call perfect formula. You're striving to create a perfect formula that you've checked all the boxes and you've considered everything you possibly can to create win-win-win-win-win for all stakeholders in the mix. That type of system that I took back to my friend was basically, if you're good enough, your organization will be selected by Walmart in order to be one of those ones on the wall that people will, from the brands that they buy, will give money to your organization because you've done things that showcase that you're going to solve the problems that the person buying will win. You're going to get new customers in the store. They're going to go there because every time they shop there, their life gets better. Every time they leave their house, their parks are getting better because now this Home Depot or this store, and I'm not saying Home Depot here, I'm just using that now becomes an impact creator. Your local environment gets changed, or you're doing, wow, every time I shop here, my life gets better. You're creating a system that is going to be self-fulfilling and cyclical, that's going to bring people to there, because every time they shop there or do something, they get to improve the problem that they were asked so you're figuring out what everybody's good at, what everybody's bad at, and what problems people have. So my friend can go tell his friends, go shop at Walmart, because if you go to Walmart, you can give money to my thing and you're not being asked for the money. No one wants to be asked for money. He now has solved his problem. He's not losing social capital because he's now not asking his friends and family for money anymore. His friends and family have won because they're not now being asked every year to get money to give to this cause that isn't changing. If he's not good enough, his system isn't going to be accepted by that Walmart. So he better be transparent and trustworthy and do what he's doing with those people's money. His fans can now go start shopping there and supporting him, because when they go shop there, he gets supported and they're happy. Walmart can now attract more customers that they've never thought of before, because now people are going to shop there because their local lives are better. Win, 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 win. Add as many stakeholders as you can to this mix, and then you get competition between retailers. Retailers are now going to compete against each other to see which is doing the best to create positive impact on local communities, and everybody now a movement starts getting created, because you better do good now, because you're not going to get your people shopping. They're doing things if you're not showing that what you're doing is helping other people's lives. So that's an example of using my formula, which I call perfect formula, to identify the problem, identify stakeholders, get my group of superhero problem solvers together to descend upon a problem with a mission if they choose to accept it, in order to then say, we're going to tackle this problem, we're going to put it through these models, and then maybe we take it to government and showcase a plan to government, because they are not the problem solvers, but they need to be presented with ideas. Ideas turnkey.
And the money, so you would look at them like the retailer.
Yeah, let's work with you. It's not about not saying let's get rid of these people. Let's work together here. Let's unite people, bring people together. Let's not say that this is the way that we want to get rid of these people. We got to bring everybody along, or else you're fighting. You're fighting, and no, get rid of those negative things. If you remove negativity and any negative words from your language and energies, you're only left with positivity, and that's very important.
So this is a good. I've asked this question to people on the show, and I think it's, when you think about it, you said the word negative thinking.
Yeah.
And so I've asked people, like, do you ever have that little voice in your head, the negative voice that says something, and then you're fighting it? And I'm curious whether you have that voice today, or you had that voice, and what did that voice tell you?
That voice has been very prominent in my life. It's been around many times. It's told me that you don't want to do this because you can't handle it, that you're going to get overwhelmed and you're going to fall back into the same cycles that you've done, and that don't bother even trying this, because it's going to lead you back to the same results, which of overwhelmingness and not wanting to do anything down the road, and it's just not worth it. But I feel I have a duty. I feel I have a duty to use, and this is the how. It's my problem solving capabilities to be able to be of service, which is my what, and why, because it makes me happy. So the what, the why, and the how is to be of service because it makes me happy is the why. And then the how is my perfect formula models to help as many people and be of service. And I think I have something unique that I can offer, and I think I have to do that. So I got to figure out this balance of how I maintain my balance. And a lot of it I've figured out is just waking up extra early and having time to myself and being mindful and slowing down. Very, very important.
Slow down. You said slow down.
Yeah, and then I tell myself to talk slower, because I can get super passionate and talk fast. But slow down. Slowing down and being in the present it's remarkably powerful. And
how many tricks do you, like you said, you wake up early in the morning? I think this is a great piece of advice for people out there living their purpose and building companies, which is like a lot of times you're under that stress wheel. I call it the hamster wheel. You're kind of, and then you can't get off and you get burned out. So like, what's sort of your, tricks of the slowdown?
The brains are not equipped to handle the amount of stimuli that is being entering our brains on a daily basis. And unfortunately, the older you get, the more challenging it is for people to understand what's happening in the speed of technology and the speed of innovation and the speed of people trying to subliminally or get into your heads to do things. It's very challenging. The fact that people can hold that off is remarkable. So it's what I've realized I've had to do, and I'm still challenging myself with it, and I'm still getting the situations that I know are not, you get on a certain run with things and things engulf you and it gets out of control, and you got to figure out ways to bring that back before you need massive resets. So for me, the biggest thing that I've learned over the last couple of years in my striving to figure out how I maintain balance, because I want to change the world. I want to get there, but I can't go through the same cycles of overwhelmingness and situations in the past. So I've had to figure out ways to solve that problem. And for me, getting to bed early and being disciplined and getting up early, getting up around 3 o'clock. I was up 2 o'clock this morning, and have time to myself.
What time do you go to bed? What time do you go to bed?
9 o'clock, 8, 9, 10. Whenever I'm tired, I do a few hours of myself after the workday, and then I get up super early and I have 5-6 hours to myself of me time that I can get through my stuff and have hours to spare still, instead of waking up at a time where I just get overwhelmed. And I'm like, the more you do things, the more your email box grows, the more commitments that people are trying to get from your time, the more you're trying to give back to people and try to do this. it's challenging, and it's tough, and a lot of people don't understand what it's like sometimes to be overwhelmed with that. But my 5 hours in the morning allows me to really slow down and get my thought processes and creativity going. That's been the biggest change for me, and I feel super balanced right now, and super, thrilled with where I want to go, what's driving me right now. My mission to be of service is really driving me to sell my company, to be able to take what I've built over the last 8 years of tools to empower people to be in control of their lives. The technology that brings Bitcoin, Ethereum to the masses is what I've been building for years, and be able to take that and then be able to say, that's the last business that I'm doing for profit.
Gotcha. And then you want to take the perfect, I guess it's this idea of the perfect formula, which you're saying you want to give that over to the world as a gift, or use that to make real impact into the world we live in.
Yeah, it's a general framework that I've got a paper coming out very shortly of a way to framework for using principles, tools, and processes to provide results that I think are optimum and can work on any problem. And that's my goal, is to kind of bring this to the masses. But that's kind of just the framework for my next thing that I'm going to be doing, which is really the focus around changing incentive structures from maximizing shareholder returns to maximizing positive impact, and getting a shift to showcase that the more positive impact that you're creating, the more you'll get those maximized returns. Not, I'm going to go for maximized returns, I'm going to limit the amount of shareholders that are in the mix, and I'm going to end up with a whole slew of people that are not behind what I'm doing. In fact, might be getting harmed by what I'm doing. And the recognition that people will get behind brands and icons that do things that are helping you. And that's really the movement that's happening, is that people want to be associated with these organizations that are helping life, improving situations. And that's kind of where I would like to help spearhead that movement, to showcase there's another way of doing things, which you'll still get what you want, but if you do it in a way that's helping more stakeholders and bringing more people onto what it is you're doing, and you're providing wins from them, your life will be easier. Your life will be so much easier. But it's just about thinking differently to get to that area that is beyond that's the way it's always been, that's the way it's always going to be.
Well, it's just, not to jump back to Ethereum and all the cryptocurrency, or let's call them blockchain companies that have coins. They have market caps based on these coins, but they in themselves may not have a lot of revenue. But the community that's using the utility of their platforms is actually, they are making money, and they're surviving and thriving by being a part of this community.
Yeah.
Could you envision a world? I was thinking, like, here, as running a public company, our market cap is based on your revenue growth, gross revenue, earnings, all around the value of that revenue that's coming in. Could you envision a world that's no longer the case, that public companies, it's the coin value, that's the value of the connectivity of the network, the value of the people using the network, and maybe the company's only 25 people. It's not tens of thousands, but there's millions of people using your stuff, but you're not getting direct revenue. But your coin value could be $100 billion, $1 trillion maybe one day. Could you envision?
I'm not a big fan of tokens and coins, where I've lost the sexiness of it, the thought of it. It just seems now like stocks and shares in a company to me, like anything else. And it's now the token value. And a lot of times these projects don't have any value in the tokens that they have. It's really just a tribe organization that's getting together to pump what it is that they have and they own. And a lot of times there's not much value behind a lot of these projects, but a lot of times there are, and there's going to be innovation that comes from it. There's going to be bubbles that emerge and blow up, because like the NFT market right now, the non-fungible token market. I've been in, I've had ideas in that space for years and years, and now it's emerging. And it's like, I don't care if I can just take that picture and put it up on my wall. I don't care if I own it. Is that worth $69 million because you say you own it? So there's going to be interesting innovations that come out of these technologies, but I don't find them cool anymore, this stuff. And I think it's because I'm moving out of a space that's more towards how can I give back? And there's so many people dealing with those things now. It's become very crowded, and I'm not interested in things that are crowded. So I'm going to try and spearhead the of service movement, the movements to figure out how to say, the more you do good for others, the more you're going to get of what it is you want. I want to spearhead that, and crypto might be a part of it, of things that I'm doing, but it's I want to showcase to people that I'm now at a time that I want to be involved in things that give back, that are not focused on any monetary gains, because that can skew people's thought about what I'm doing if they think that there's some type of profit motive behind it. And I want to make sure that's not the case, to build absolute trust and show transparency. And what it is I'm doing is just to give back and be of service. So it's about, to me, philanthropic stuff in the future. And the system of tokens right now, it's not, it's a few years ago, it's just not where I am right now and what I want to do.
I agree with you, there's tokens, but I'm thinking, like, could a company's market cap value not be based on its centralization of revenue? But maybe, I'm saying, if it has real value, let's say a company.
I mean, it's not just, it's never has been just centralization of revenue, right? It's also future, it's a number of different things. It's IP, it's all kinds of things that make up the company. And I mean, Ethereum is a perfect example. There is no Ethereum. Ethereum is a decentralized protocol that runs on the cloud. There's no centralized organization that runs it. There's no company behind it. There's no jurisdiction behind it. It lives out there freely by thousands of people that are running the system to aggregate and put it together. And then you have things like you mentioned earlier on about DAOs, which are decentralized autonomous organizations that have systems where they run autonomously with no jurisdictions. And based on the rules of the contract, they will execute. And if you have a certain token that represents ownership and governance in the system, you get to vote. And you're voting where the money is going. And you could have thousands or millions of people that are voting in decentralized fashion, democratically voting to see where they're going to take that organization. And that's the things, they are definitely emerging. So yes, it's already happening. And the antiquated models that do have jurisdictions, which can be targeted or attacked by regulators, by governments, potentially for things that they don't like in a certain jurisdiction, is just going to push things in a new direction that there's going to be no way to possibly challenge those organizations. And it's going to lead to more problems, I think, and also more innovation. Figuring out how do we change regulations and rules and governments in a way that says, what's your problem? Let's try and figure this out in a way that's thinking beyond the hammer and enacting things that it's going to eventually hurt you, because the innovation is going to get out. And these systems will enable things that you've never imagined, that you're not going to be able to control. And you might want to start thinking a little bit differently in the way that you handle things to get to the root cause of what problems you actually have.
So we're coming to the end of our awesome talk. Well, I'd love to have another one, but I always ask, if there's a piece of advice, that you can give people about living their purpose, about taking the journey like you did of this independent, I'm going to do it first, I'm not in the crowd, which is the entrepreneurial life in many ways. What kind of nuggets of advice would you give them?
So the first thing I would say is don't give people advice. The thing is to maybe describe a little bit, and this is how a lot of models work for YPO and different things. It's the idea of, here's what I've learned from my experiences. And if there's something of value that you might get out of it, maybe that can help you. But in general, you got to live your own life, and only you know your experiences that you've gone through. Only you know, I think, what you should do. And the idea of doing things that I've always felt was, I'm not going to do something that I would regret based on what someone else tried to get me to do. It's a matter of taking personal responsibility for what it is you're doing. Very, very, very important. Okay. Providing value in everything that you're doing, being of service to others, being positive, being optimistic, all these little things that you can do to showcase that you're here to learn. And learning is a massive thing that a lot of people don't understand how important it is to be learning from every experience, whether they think negative or whether they think positive. It's that everything should be done in a way that you express gratitude to the situation that you've been in and the learning lessons that you have. And try to figure out ways to remove that voice in your head that you initially talked about, which is a lot of times that ego. It's a thing that says to you that, you're not going to do that. You're too good for that. Or there's no way that you be looked at that because I'm worried what people are going to think about me. It's trying to push that conditioning mindset that's been kind of brought forward because of society and because of the way we've been raised and people we've been around, to say that you're not good enough and you should be fearful. And don't go and challenge yourself to do that, and just try to just be there and be normal and do the things that you think society is trying to get you to do. So individualism, very important, but doing it in a way that's really doing things to help other people is what I try to live.
Helping others. Help others first.
Yeah.
Be in service. Be in service.
Being in service. That's it. Of service.
So Anthony, thank you for being on the podcast, and perfect formula. I assume this is going to come out in something that all of us could read and engage with you on somewhere. I don't know if you have some place that we could, you think you're going to put it, or do you have any ideas where you're going to put it in the world so we can get it yet, or no?
Well, you're gonna have to tempt me with a part 2 sometime. You got it, because you've given other people. So I'm gonna ask possibly for a part 2 when
I'll give you part 2.
Oh, thank you. So Perfect Formula is going to be a paper that's going to come out. That's going to be really clear in a way that the sixth grader can understand it, which is really important to me with papers. And I'm calling it an orange paper rather than a white paper. It's a term that I kind of came up with an easily understandable vision document or idea or thought. So I'll definitely make it available. We can talk about it in the next one. And once it comes out, I'd love to have as many people read it and give me feedback as possible on it.
Yeah, I think we're all excited. I can't wait to read it too. We'll have you back on and we'll talk. So, but thank you once again for sharing everything. Thank you for everything you're doing, especially the idea of you're now going to spend a lot of your life in service, in giving back. And you've been very successful, but some people, they just want to buy more things and do things with their success. You're like, I want to give back. And that's just, I think, the mark of a tremendous person that we all want to follow in those shoes. You know, we have our own shoes, like you said, but the idea of giving service, you're just a beacon for it. And thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. I think it's the one thing that can give you eternal happiness is just being there and being of service to other people.
Awesome.
Thank you.